On this week's episode of Nosebleed Radio, we have the first installment in our Best of Nosebleed Radio series. We look back on some of our best interviews from the first 20 episodes and put them together for your listening pleasure. This week, we start things off with Heisman Trophy winner Eric Crouch and round out the show with former Nebraska lineman Matt Vrzal. If you're a Huskers fan, make sure to stick around, and even if you're just a football fan, I'm sure you'll enjoy these conversations. Football is just around the corner, so make sure you get in the right mindset with these interviews. So without further ado, let's roll the music.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
You're listening to Nosebleed Radio. Here's your host, Tucker Franklin.
We're here with Heisman Trophy winner Eric Crouch. Eric, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Doing good. So first off, I want to start off by saying congratulations on the new coaching job at Midland. How does it feel to be back around college football?
I love it. I really do. I'm really enjoying just learning the new offense and getting to know our players, working with our staff. We got a really young staff, so a lot of good guys, a lot of football knowledge, a lot of energy, and we're going to do some good things. Jeff Jamrog is really doing some nice things at Midland, and I'm just glad to be a part of it. Really am.
That'll be fun. What are you looking forward to most about coaching?
Well, I'm just looking to develop players, be part of that team camaraderie and see kids develop and get better and build confidence in themselves. And everybody's got something to work on. I mean, that's just how it is, being an individual. It doesn't matter if it's sports or not. So, but being a football coach and pinpointing athletics and how you compete and, hold yourself to a high standard, really that's what I'm going to enjoy the most, to see guys go from where they're at now to where they probably never thought that they would get. And that's just plain old simple hard work.
Oh, yeah.
I can do it.
I love that aspect of sports. I started coaching at Scott in the last couple of years. I think that's been like the most rewarding thing in coaching, especially guys that young, as you see them go from like somewhere they never thought they could get to somewhere to like the state championship level even too. It's incredible, I think, watching that. You've been away from college football for a while now. How did you get back? How did you go about getting back into college football with Midland? How did that start?
Well, it just, I've been coaching youth football for the last 5 years, and my son Carson is about to go into high school this fall, and I just figured, let's continue. If there's an opportunity to get into the college level and help kids, develop into great young men and help win some football games and be part of something like that. And Midland was perfect. It's close. I know Jeff Jamrog very well from him being at Nebraska for all those years as an assistant coach, and then even under Bo Pelini's regime. So it just worked out, man. It was a lot of fun just to be looked at as a possible coach. You look at it, everybody usually goes like GA route when they're young in their 20s, and right after college they get involved somehow. And for me, my life has not kind of been the standard. It's been, I bought a business when I was 24 years old. Those are, not too many 24-year-olds are thinking about buying businesses. And so I've got 15 years of, life skills, and it's, just transfers over to, helping these young men make good decisions, and, dealing with life situations gives you patience and knowledge. And that's where I kind of bring a little bit different dynamic to our coaching staff. It's a young staff. Our offensive coordinator, Ryan Williams, and I are the same age. We're both 39, and we're the two oldest coaches on the staff, excluding our head coach.
That's crazy.
That's just the way it is, and we're really enjoying it right now, and things look good.
You got practices underway, and I would call them spring practices, but it's not quite feeling like spring. So how have those been going so far?
It's Nebraska. You just got to be prepared to go out and the weather is the weather. And we've been outside on some really cold, rainy days, really cold, early rainy days. We've started practice at 5 a.m. On our Fridays, so we go pretty early.
Yikes.
But I'll tell you what, it's been a lot of fun. Our players are focused. They're continuing to raise the bar every single time they step out on the field, and we still want them to get a little bit more focused on doing the right things and being consistent. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the effort and where we're going. And I think there's going to be some buy-in from all these players. That Jamrock is running a really good program, and this will start to translate to wins. It's, when you can start winning in the classroom and winning in your meetings and winning as a person and doing the right things and making good decisions, then your chances of winning on the football field go up dramatically. So that's kind of where we're headed.
Now, we took a peek at Midland's roster from last season, and it seems like you have a lot of young guys at the running back position. Are there any guys that really stood out to you so far?
Yeah, we do have a pretty young roster. We've got 2 juniors. There's a senior. Daryl's back his senior year. And then we've got, 3 or 4 sophomores and then all the incoming freshmen. So it is a pretty young group. Everybody has got a little bit different style about them. Lucas Voppenford from Blair, he's pretty consistent, got good speed, makes a lot of good decisions. We've got, Gary Cannon, who played quarterback, halfway through the season last year. He's from San Diego and then moved to running back the last part of the season. And Gary's got a lot of talent, and we just got to get him to get excited and show his energy for that position. And I think he's, got very high potential. Adrian Kellogg II,
he's good.
Adrian from Millard North, Millard North Mustang, a lot of Millard North players on the Midland roster. So he's another guy that, the list goes on. Andrew Miller from Broken Bow, he's really been impressive this spring, and he knows his stuff. He's a steward of the game, and that really helps. So, have all these running backs out there competing for the job is going to create a great competitive atmosphere that makes every one of us better.
Yeah, I remember watching Adrian play in high school at Millard North, and he just always seemed to have really good vision on the field, which was something that really impressed me with him.
He's been hurt. He's recovering from a knee injury that he had. We haven't seen him yet. He's doing rehab, so hopefully here in the near future we get him back out of practice.
Yeah, speaking of injuries, are you planning on having your running backs do some extra neck stretches in case they get face masks like you did against Kansas State?
Yeah. You make a really good point. I might have to pull out one of those drills and just say, hey guys, check this out, show the little video. I don't even think any of these guys were alive when it happened, so they might get a kick out of that one.
Yeah, I've just seen the picture of it. That was nasty watching that.
Yeah, what was that like, though, getting your face jerked or your neck jerked around like that? Did you know, in the moment that your head went back around that far?
No, not really. You're in the moment. You got a lot of adrenaline. You're in the moments of the game where you win or lose, and so, you can feel no pain. But I'll tell you what, I felt a lot of pain the next day, the next week. I'm sure that some of my neck stiffness is due to that play, but it's part of the game. I wouldn't take one snap back. I really enjoyed my career at Nebraska, and obviously there's a few calls that I can point out in my career that didn't go our way, but I'm sure that's true with a lot of players. Since instant replay's been around, I'm sure that's changed things a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of your career in Nebraska, we got a couple of Mizzou fans here. Do you want to brag about that 95-yard touchdown run you had against them in 2001 real quick?
Well, yeah. One of the coaches brought over a couple jock straps to me after the game.
That's awesome.
Man.
Speaking of Nebraska, how do you think that they will do with Scott Frost at the helm now? Do you think having a coach who played under Tom Osborne can help bring a championship back to Nebraska?
No doubt in my mind. Scott is a pure find. He's going to be a tremendous coach there at Nebraska, and I know he's still a young coach. Obviously did well at University of Central Florida. Has got a great staff in place. I was just at practice this morning, and man, they're really moving around at practice. They're really demanding energy, a lot of physicality, a lot of focus. They're throwing a lot at these guys offensively and defensively, and they're getting them to work. And football is a warrior sport. It's a physical sport, and I don't care how fast you play the game when it comes to how fast an offense runs, but you still need to be physical, and you still need to in my opinion dominate with the run game first.
I've talked to a couple players. I don't know if you remember Christian Banker from Scott from last year, but I met up with him over winter break, and I asked him about just the workout regimes and stuff there. And he said the only word he could really describe it was fast, like so much faster than what they've done in the past. So I think that's seriously going to help him out in the future, keeping that conditioning up and that strength up.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Duvall, he's brought on a tremendous work ethic in the weight room, and I think it's going to translate to the football field the very first year. I think they're going to be stronger, faster, less injuries, and that's going to help their confidence a lot.
Like Shane mentioned, I'm a Mizzou fan, so I kind of like to poke fun at Nebraska here and then, but I've grown to like Nebraska more that I've moved up closer to it. How long
Wasn't
do you...
there some kick off a foot or something that happened a ways back? Something happened there. I don't know.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that was a pretty good play. I
Right.
remember that one.
All right, that's enough. That's enough. How many years do you think that Nebraska fans will give Scott Frost before they want him out?
Well, I think they believe in Scott, and if Scott doesn't start off so well, I think that he's going to be given more slack than what a normal coach would be given. I mean, Scott is a young coach, but they're hot right now. The staff has done great things. We're playing in a really tough conference, and Nebraska's down towards the bottom right now. It's not like he's coming in and he's expected to keep Nebraska at the top of the Big Ten. Nebraska's never been at the top of the Big Ten.
Right.
And so I think there's a lot of room for improvement as a university. I don't know. I'm thinking that be about 4 or 5 years before, I think he starts feeling the heat. But I really do believe that, with the next couple of 3 years, obviously this next year's got a really tough schedule behind it. But the next 2 or 3 years, I think Nebraska's competing for a conference championship.
I agree with you. I've said that to you the whole time. What do you think about Frost trying to build up the walk-on program, especially focusing on like in-state recruits versus out-of-state recruits?
Well, the nice thing about Scott being our coach is that he understands the program very well. And having said that, he understands the walk-on program even better, being around it. So they're used to high numbers. They're used to kids coming in from small towns and being part of the passion and the excitement to play for Nebraska. And then the pure fact that you can earn a scholarship. There's been many walk-ons that have earned scholarships, have gone on to play in the NFL. So, does every coach get it right when they're recruiting high school kids? No, they don't. But that's the beauty of the walk-on program, is that, kids can come in and earn their way to the top and get a lot of playing time and be a part of it. And it really, I think, gives a lot of small towns a big connection to the program, which they haven't had at all in the recent years.
And I've always claimed that Memorial Stadium is the greatest atmosphere for college football. We have one guy here who's a Michigan fan, so he obviously begs to differ. But how did it feel to play in front of the Nebraska faithful at Memorial Stadium?
Nebraska's my first experience, I'll tell you, I flew out to play Cal Berkeley in 1998. Was a redshirt freshman that year, and this was my first start on the road. So you can imagine, 18, 19 years old, you're going out to, I had an injury. I had a bad hamstring. So here I am. I'm injured. I'm not going to be able to perform to the level that I want to. I'm starting the game, and I'm on the road in California against a pretty good California Berkeley team.
Yeah.
And I remember coming out of the locker room and looking up into the stands, and I literally saw 50% of that stadium was red. And I knew it was going to be a good day ever since I saw that moment. And that just goes to show you that, halfway across the country, even all the way across the country, that Nebraska is going to support their team no matter what. And I think, as you've seen Nebraska, go up and down these past few years with where the program's been and just the struggles it's had in recent times, that, the spring game sold out in one day, 90,000 people. So that tells you right there that people in Nebraska are real excited, coming off of a bad season that we had, but they're still supporting the university and the football program.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Being born and raised in Nebraska, how much did it mean to you to be able to play for Nebraska and have the level of success that you did?
Well, I'm a first-born generation in Nebraska, and I played when I was a kid. All my games were on a Saturday afternoon while Nebraska was playing. So, I didn't really get a chance to watch Nebraska until I got to high school, because all those games were being played as I was playing. a lot of games were around noon on Saturdays. And I was obviously a Nebraska fan because of the offense that they ran. I became more of a fan during my high school years because watching Tommy Frazier and seeing what Scott Frost was doing and just watching their offense and saying, look, man, this is right for me. Like, I'm running option up here in Millard North, and, we're crushing it, and what a perfect place to go do the same thing in college. And I'm just really thankful that they recruited me as a quarterback, and, Notre Dame wanted me as a running back, and Ohio State wanted me as a receiver. And I'll tell you, there wasn't many schools that were willing to put their neck out on the line for me at the quarterback position other than Nebraska. So, I'm pretty fortunate to have had that opportunity from Coach Osborne and Turner Gill.
Yeah, speaking of Coach Osborne, who had the biggest impact on your football career just in general?
It's a really good question. I've had a lot of great coaches. My youth coach was tremendous, George Conley. I'll never forget him saying quick feet. I just drilled it into my head. And so I think just by hearing that, I knew I had to move. Football is not a game where you can, sit on your heels. You got to be ready to go. And so I was always, ready with the ball in my hand. And I think that was, he made a big impact on me. I had a great basketball coach and mentor, Dr. Jim Brown. Was fortunate enough to play for a great high school coach. Coach Fred Petito has been at Millard North for over 30 years.
Staple there.
He's had a tremendous football program. And then I get recruited by Tom Osborne, and I get to play for Turner Gill, who was my quarterback coach there. So the list of guys that have influenced me as a football player have been tremendous. Even Frank Solich is a head coach there when I was there at Nebraska. So I don't know that I can say that there was one guy. I mean, there's a little bit of every one of these guys that I've got, the good fortune to learn from and to be a part of that's kind of shaped who I am and how I coach.
It's a good football family.
Cool. Yeah.
Who would you say is the best player you ever played with?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always go back to Mike Brown. He was just, he was a strong safety at Nebraska, played, many years in the NFL at the Chicago Bears. And Mike was just, very hard-nosed, physical, was a really tough guy, could make any tackle in the open field, which was always impressive to me. He was very smart, a great teammate, a great leader, and that's why he played a long time in the league. So I always refer back to Mike Brown as being one of the best football players that I had a chance to play with. I mean, if you go to the college level or the the NFL pro level, I was with the Rams and I got to know Kurt Warner, Marshall Falk, and all those guys, and obviously being with Grant Wistrom. There's been a lot of pros that I had a good fortune to play with, but still none of them are. Mike Brown was the ultimate guy.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great name to drop there. That he was unstoppable in Nebraska. Have you ever gotten to stay at the Heisman House? We were wondering.
I haven't. As far as I know, that place doesn't even exist.
It's
crap. Just on TV.
Wow.
No, you won the Heisman in a very QB-dominated race. We looked it up. Every one of the top 6 as a quarterback. Although the 2 finalists went on to switch to wide receiver, you and Antoine Randall L. What do you think about guys like Lamar Jackson saying that he wants to remain a quarterback in the NFL when everyone seems to want him to make the switch to wide receiver or something else?
I love it, and I support it 110%. I think, you got to go with what your heart's telling you, and otherwise you're not going to believe what you're doing. And if there's one thing that I could go back and do, that would be, be a little more strong, hard-willed to say I'm a quarterback and that's what I'm going to do. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But, at least, you're standing by what you believe in. And I truly believe that Lamar Jackson's going to do great things in the NFL as a quarterback. He's got a ton of talent, can throw the ball. He's super fast. There's got to be a team. Look at Drew Brees. Look at, Russell Wilson. I mean, RG3, if he wasn't hurt, he'd still be playing. I mean, the list goes. Michael Vick. You can't tell me that, he's not a Michael Vick. I don't want to hear that he can't be a quarterback in the NFL. It doesn't make sense to me.
I agree with you.
Going back to your college days, who was one of those teams that you just hated while you were at Nebraska?
I didn't play with that level of hate. There was probably some stronger dislike, but
It's a good word.
You know,
Yeah.
I'd probably say at the time it was probably Colorado. It had nothing to do with their football team. It always had something to do with their fans during the game. So, you know, as far as teams, you know, there were a lot of competitive teams. You know, Miami was very competitive. Oklahoma was very competitive. Texas was a good team. I mean, towards the end of my career, Kansas State was always a competitive team. I actually, even throughout my whole career in Nebraska, you know, Kansas State was pretty darn good. So I couldn't say there was a team out there that I hated, but there were some really good teams that were coached well and had great players and talent.
I'm so glad you said Colorado because I have maintained that I strongly dislike, we'll use that word again, Colorado for years up here, and no one has understood it, so I'm glad
Never
to
got
have some backup on that.
I never understood it.
Well, you know, I think it's more what happens with the students and the fans during the games that kind of bothers me.
Yeah.
You know, you wish that, you know, they'd step up and have a little bit more class, but, you know, that's just me.
What bothers me is they got an extra down against Mizzou on the goal line.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez, now it's Colorado and Nebraska
Yeah.
that you don't like, huh?
Anti-Colorado podcast.
Yeah.
We're calling that right now. One thing I read recently was Scott Frost talking about his emphasis on special teams. He said he wanted to get a lot of his starters out there on special teams, a lot of the best athletes out there. What are your thoughts? I know you're coaching special teams now at Midland too.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts kind of on that philosophy?
Well, I think it's a great philosophy, and it makes sense. I mean, why wouldn't you want your best players out there on special teams? I mean, you have to treat special teams like you treat defense, like you treat offense. You can't just say, look, you know, we're going to run our practice. 50% of the time is going to be defense and 50% is going to be offense. And, oh, wait, let's try to squeeze special teams in on Wednesday for 20 minutes. It's not going to work.
It's a third of the game.
Special teams is a huge part of the game. You know, if you look at how it's affected field position, how it affects scoring, it's a really, really important part of the game. And you want your athletes and you want your playmakers to be out there, guys that can run down the field and shed blocks, guys that can get down the field with speed and make an explosive hit, guys that understand the game. You know, it's you know, one of these things where we're looking for, you know, players during the spring. We're doing lots of drills trying to see, you know, who's going to develop and who's going to make the special teams unit. We treat it with the utmost importance on our team, and most teams should do that. So I agree with what Scott said. I think he's doing the right thing.
Yeah, I do too. I think a lot of people overlook it and they just see it as, like you said, just kind of a side thought. But when you look into how big of a factor that can play, and especially like if you can flip the field on someone and pin them inside the 5 with a good punt or something, that really can affect the momentum of the game, you know?
Yeah, it changes the game in an instant. A punt return for a touchdown, blocked kick, kickoff return for a touchdown. I mean, heck, when your offense doesn't have to go out there and do it, let the kickoff and punt team do it. You know, it just changes the game.
Did you get a chance to watch the Combine this year?
I did not, but I did see some pieces of it. I mean, what stuck out to me is the kid from UCF with one hand, Griffin.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's the guy that really stood out in the Combine this year. Got a lot of publicity for, you know, how fast he ran and the things that he's doing with only, you know, his disability.
Unbelievable.
It's
athlete.
impressive.
Yeah.
So impressive.
We'll end it with this one. What advice do you have to any kids out there aspiring to be great football players or coaches?
I honestly say that you got to have passion for this. You know, it's not something that you can just think about and talk about. You actually have to do it. And when I say do it, I mean you need to show up to the weight room. You need to show up and watch film. You need to show up, and even when your coach isn't telling you to show up, you do things on your own. You make your steps right if you're a running back or receiver. If you're a quarterback, you make your drops perfect. You know, you don't have to be around your coach all the time to be working on those small little things. It's, you know, we're preaching all the time. It's about the small details. It's about the little things. I mean, going out there and making sure that you're right on every single play and being consistent and working on it. So, you know, those are the guys that are going to excel, the guys that, you know, think they're great and only have to show up to practice and show up to the game. And, yeah, it may work for a certain amount of time. You can get so far on your athletic ability, but how you handle yourself, how you prepare, how you study the game, the things that you know. Do you know offensive and line play? If you're a running back, do you know what the quarterback's doing and why? It's a lot to learn. You know, there's a lot of positions, a lot of moving parts in football, and I just, you know, my advice would be to learn as much of the game as you can from all positions, make yourself that much more valuable as a teammate and a leader.
Shane said he had the last one, but I got a good one right here. How much does the Heisman actually weigh? Is it really heavy?
You know, it's much heavier than what people would think. It's probably 45, 50 pounds.
Wow. Holy moly.
Yeah, it's up there. I mean, it's not light by any means, but you know, that night that you win it, you're throwing it over your head like you don't feel it. So
Yeah.
I know that.
Do you know where it is? Do you still keep tabs on it?
Yeah, I've got it over at my place. We keep it pretty safe. It moves around a little bit. The school at the university's got one, and then I got the one that night. So the school has a replica that they display there at the Heisman room, and then I've got one that was given to me that night for personal use. So, yeah, it's pretty cool, man.
That's neat.
Pretty cool thing.
Well, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. I'm glad you guys reached out.
Oh, absolutely.
Thanks, Tucker. Thanks, Shane. And you guys call me anytime.
Yep.
Oh, sounds good.
Love to have you on again.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem.
We're here with former Nebraska offensive lineman and pizza proprietor, Matt Vrzal. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing good, boys. How are you?
Doing good.
Pretty good.
How's the pizza business going?
Good. Pizza business is good, man. It's growing. My Paison's Pizzeria here in Omaha, we seem to grow every day, and if I had any more hair to lose, I'd have lost it by now. But yeah,
I was saying, about to lose eyebrows now is what you're going to do next.
Hopefully someday it'd be the back hair, but that just hangs on too good.
So with baseball starting up, what do you think about the Cubs season so far?
Well, buddy, it's a little disheartening. I leave for Chicago on Sunday for my first vacation in a year, so I'm super stoked for that.
Yeah.
You know, it's a long season. Baseball is a marathon, and you got to survive. You're just trying to survive till about June, July, and then go from there and see what happens.
So you're saying you haven't given up on the season yet? Because if I were you, I would have. No. They got too many good players not to. It's nice. It's been in Theo we trust. So it is his league after all. True.
Yeah, what do you think about the signing of Darvish?
The thing with Darvish, I think they got him at a little bit of a value. They paid about $5 million less a year than people thought they should. Now, if they get to the postseason and he doesn't amount to much, then we got other problems. But it's a long way to go, and there's a lot of seasons. So I'm happy that they kind of bolstered that rotation and then can hopefully get some bullpen help as well.
Are you a little sad now that you can't blame the Cubs' troubles on a goat from like 100 years ago? Or you still?
No. You know me well enough. I don't make too many excuses. The only thing I blamed them for was playing terrible baseball for a while there. So it's nice to see them good, and 10 and 11-year-old Matt Vrzal is freaking stoked because his team is finally relevant in baseball.
That's a good point.
What did you think about the whole Bartman ordeal? What do you think? Like, the Cubs started to try to reach out to him. Do you think that the Cubs should try to make amends with him?
I do. And that thing, if you ever wonder the power of media and the way you can spin a message, you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody that wasn't going to reach for that baseball. Like, to have the wits about yourself to just hold everybody back and not try to grab that is crazy.
Right.
Moises Alou freaking out after that, and then Alex Rodriguez, his error was something I was more concerned about. Like, hey, why is nobody blaming the shortstop that's getting paid millions of dollars a year, not fielding a simple ground ball and turning two?
Yeah.
But everybody's got to have somebody to blame for something, right?
That's
true.
Absolutely. Everybody's got an excuse. So I really wanted to get into more like Nebraska stuff here. So we just want to ask you, what was it like playing for Coach Osborne when you were back in the day?
I'm just worried more why you guys are slumming today. I mean, you got Heisman Trophy winner Eric Crouch on your show, and now you're to a backup center. Like, have the ratings fallen off that much?
Anytime we can talk about Nebraska football is a good day for me, though. So.
I mean, I figured I'm probably third in line behind Isaiah Ramsey. Like, you guys do a good job. Coach Osborne it was really cool to be there at that time. I learned so much more from him about probably life than I ever did about football, and that just means hard work and all that, all the cliches that come into it.
Sure.
But he prepared us to be men first and then football players second. So that was it's something I try to take away. I get the opportunity to coach fine, upstanding young men like Shane Miller at Omaha Scott Catholic every year. And and it's just something I can see little bits and pieces of him every day that I get to coach.
Playing under Coach Osborne, do you see a lot of him? What about like your high school coaches? Do they have any influence on how you coach now at Scott Catholic?
I would say early in my career, I coached a little bit more like my high school coach, who was a yeller screamer, Ken Fisher, a storied guy in the state of Nebraska for football. And I've matured over the years. You guys, now I'm a much more mild-mannered version of myself, and I did probably pull some things from Coach Osborne that nothing I say on game day, no rah-rah speech, no bash my head against the wall talk is going to make you know any more about what we're trying to do in the game. Mm-hmm. So I try to focus a little more on the full week of preparation and get all that stuff in and get guys ready to go that way. And then, they have to everybody's got to find their own motivation to play. I can't make you play hard. You have to want to go do that.
Sure. I'm still waiting to see that mild-mannered guy show up sometime, but
I get now. I didn't say it wasn't intense.
Yeah.
I said it just, this is about Vrzal on level 4, which you guys did. You should have seen it at 10.
So you mentioned that you played center at Nebraska, and it also says you played guard as well. What was your favorite center or guard?
That's a tough one because they're both fun. At the center position at Nebraska in the 90s, you were the guy that controlled the whole setup. So you had to make calls, and you got it. So it's always – I caught when I played baseball as well, and all my coaches in baseball were catchers. So I called games since I was 10 years old. But it was probably more fun mentally at center, more fun displaying your talents at guard because we pulled a lot. You're out in space, and you could cut guys, and you could, it's a little easier to run your mouth when there's somebody directly over you being a 3 technique. You tell them, hey, it's going to be a bad day for you today.
Yeah.
I had heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but I had heard stories about like the 90s Nebraska teams where the linemen would just line up and tell the guys, hey, we're running up the 2-hole here, try and stop it. Was that true? Is there any truth to that?
That is 100% true.
That's
in the
so
97
awesome.
In the 97 national championship game, there's a guy by the name of Matt Hoskinson. He would tell Leonard Little when they were going to run right at him, and then they'd get like 6 or 8 yards, and then he'd tell Leonard, he's like, Leonard, I don't know what else I can do for you. I told you the play was coming this way. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to make it look better for you. So we were all a bunch of kind of overweight smartasses, and that was probably what made us good and made us fun to be around.
Yeah, I think that attitude really helps out. Was there ever a type of, like, playing on a team with that caliber, was there ever a game you walked into where you're like, man, I don't know if we got it this game, or will you always have that, like, attitude where we're going to kick their ass,
The only game, and this will be kind of revisionist history, but the only game I didn't really feel confident when we walked on the field was Arizona State, because the year before, a scrawny little quarterback from Wahoo, Newman, had made a read in that game, and his audible was to check to, I believe it was a post, and he hit Lance Brown for a touchdown, and that put the game at like 77-14. And that quarterback's name was Matt Turman, and they were super, super pissed after that game. Like, they were mad. Like, coaches wanted to fight, and I was like, oh, man, this is bad. So to fast forward into 96, you know, you got the new quarterback, Scott Frost. Everybody's kind of trying to find their bearings. And I didn't – that just had a bad feel to it. That would have been the only time in my 5 years of college that I didn't think when we took the field we were going to win.
Do you ever blame Turman for that? Do you ever talk to him about that at all?
No, it's like Coach Osborne said in the post-game presser. He said, listen, we don't train our third-team quarterback to go in and take a knee. Like, he's there to make reads, or second-team quarterback. He's there to make reads. He's there to do his job. So if they don't like it, I'm sorry, but our kids are going to all be prepared to succeed. And if their defense can't make that adjustment, then, oh, well. People probably need to take that philosophy more in life. Like, if you don't like it, stop it.
Yeah.
You know, we got mud-holed last year in the championship game by York, and everybody's like, oh, you pissed? I'm like, no, we couldn't do anything to move the ball offensively. It's our fault, or it's my fault.
Yeah.
The offensive line didn't do their job, so it never gets usually past the finger for me. It's usually the thumb where the blame lies.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Well, I stole it from Pelini.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was it like playing in the national championship? Did you get any, like, cool gifts or anything? They give you anything for doing that?
The swag bags were always nice. place. It's nowhere near what it is today. There was some video or some picture of Coach Osborne in his Adidas jacket from, I think, 96.
Yeah, I saw that.
I got this Apex. Like, I have so many windsuits that if I ever decide to become a track athlete, like, I am set. But one of them is gold, teal, maroon, and blue.
Wow.
And, I mean, it is, like, I could be like a late 70s, early 80s rapper if I really don that baby out and got me a big old gold rope chain. I'd be set.
It's pretty fly for a white guy.
Yeah, for sure. But the rings and the watches and all that stuff is always cool, and to look back at it now. But no, we weren't getting like PS4s or PS9s or whatever they are, and TVs and stuff like that. We got like honestly, for the Orange Bowl, we were in 4 Orange Bowls while I was at Nebraska, one Fiesta Bowl, and every year they would give you an Orange Bowl jock. 1995
Really?
Orange Bowl, and I'm like,
nice.
What do you do with this? And so then you come home and you're like, and people are like, hey, did you get one of those Orange Bowl jocks? I'm like, yeah. They're like, can I buy it from you? I'm like, sure. I'm like,
Slightly
we
used.
didn't wear these. Like, yeah, we know. We just think it's hilarious. I'm like, all right, here you go.
That's pretty
awesome.
funny.
Oh yeah.
So we also saw when we were looking at some stats from you, that you were honorable mention All Academic Big 12 recipients and on the honor roll a couple of times. So were you just like a nerd in college, or?
Kind of another kind of thing I hang my hat on in football is that the offensive linemen are easily the smartest people on the team. And of the group of linemen, I was kind of mid-pack. Like, you had the genetic lottery winner Rob Zaska, and John Zaska for that matter. Rob, when he graduated college, I think had $250,000 in postgraduate scholarships.
Oh.
He was 6'4", probably 290, maybe around 12% body fat, and you're just like, dude, like, I'm 6'1", I weigh 333, like, what the hell? Like, get some over here. But yeah, I was always a good student, and school was, most of the time, was easy for me. I like math, and I tested out of Spanish in college, so it was pretty cool.
That's cool.
But yeah, I was just a little nerdy. I was the cool nerd jock guy, Shane.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah. Just take them all. Yeah.
A hybrid, like a hybrid.
I got voted Mr. Islander at Grand Island Senior High School. Not a big deal.
Not to brag.
Yeah, that's what I do.
So playing on those Nebraska teams, we asked Eric Crouch this too. What was one of your least favorite teams to play against?
I had a bad run in college. Like, I must have been seen as an easy to hit target. So when we went and played K-State one year, Brendan Stye looked at me and said, "Hey, whatever you do, don't take your helmet off." I was like, okay. So we're walking, and when at old K-State, you had to walk out of the locker room and you walk through their crowd kind of to get to the field. So I got my helmet on and I'm walking out there. All of a sudden, I feel this like warm sensation trickling down my back, and I look back and Stye's got this guy like kind of pinned up against another guy by the throat, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? And he goes, that dude broke a fifth of Jim Beam over your helmet. I was like, is that why my back is all like kind of tingly? You spill alcohol on yourself. Not that you guys are 21, you wouldn't know that.
No, I am. I know now. Yeah.
It was a little tingly. I'm like, man. So then I go in the locker room at halftime and I smell like booze. So everybody's like, Verse? I'm like, yeah, it's a long story. At Iowa State, I got hit in the head in the helmet with a battery, a D battery. Missouri, I couldn't confirm it, but I'm pretty sure I got hit with a urine bomb.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
They're big on that in
Colorado,
Missouri.
Colorado, we just had a lot of fun with because they were decent. They weren't that good, but they would talk, and their fans were like 6 foot from you.
Oh,
So
yeah.
anytime I can get into some passive-aggressive jabs, and, they were taking some pretty good shots at me because it was kind of getting toward the time, like, hey, Vrzal, you might get in now. And so when I went in the game, I gave him a thumbs up. But no, it was, those squads were just good. And to walk on there, and you knew you were renting space in their head before the game even started. It's just like, yeah, we got you. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. Do you still keep in contact with some of your old teammates, like other than Coach Terman, who obviously you see all the time, but any of the other guys you still keep in contact with a lot?
Yeah, I try to stay. I'm kind of I'm a social guy. I think, Shane, you'll know that, owning restaurants for 15 years and bars for 15 years. I like people. So I'm in contact with guys from the 70s through to some of the 2000s. I just talked to Jared Thomas the other day, which was good to catch up with Jared.
Yeah.
I try to check in on Jason Peter every now and then, make sure he's all right.
Yeah.
I do some radio here in town in Omaha, so I see Damon Benning. Clinton Childs was at the shop the other day, so it's good to catch up with them. So, yeah, I keep in touch with a lot of guys. They're just, they say football is a brotherhood and da-da-da.
Yeah.
I'd call those guys in a second if I was ever in a pinch, and they'd be there. So
Sure. So you're kind of like, you're the social, cool, jock, funny nerd guy, right? You just had all the roles then on the team? Okay, nice. Good to know.
There's a reason I do radio, but there's a reason I'm not on TV. So, you got to play to your strengths. Like, you try to go to a bar in Lincoln and try to pick up a girl at bald, 330 pounds, you got to be funny. I'm not there for the looks. I'm there to make you laugh and be like, oh, that guy's funny. A little sympathy make-out session. So, yeah, you gotta hone your skills.
Do you guys ever talk about, when you catch up with those guys, do you ever talk about that time in 1995 when you beat Mizzou 57-0?
It's come up. I mean, honestly, and offense if you want to, Tanner, I'm sorry, but
it's Tucker.
Mizzou at that time, they didn't factor into it till later. Pinkel was he there? I don't know if he was there yet, but you could tell they had something getting better. But at the times we were playing, it was just like, hey, let's go. It was kind of like, you ever seen the movie Johnny Be Good?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, what are we going to do to get Vrzal in the game? Like, all right, let's go. Up 35-0 at halftime, right? Vrzal, go in.
Who is the most fun guy to be around on the team?
Fun guy to be around. This will be a head scratcher for some Nebraska fans, but Christian, I have yet to have a bad time with Christian Peter.
Really?
He's one of the funniest dudes you'll ever meet. He used to get pissed off at me because we would go out to the bars in Lincoln in the off season, and I would wear some Birkenstocks, right?
Yeah. For
comfort. And he would look at me just with this scowl. He'd be so pissed off. He'd be like, and he couldn't say my name right. He'd be like, Vrzal. He's like, what are you going to do if we get in a fight? He's like, you're going to try to kick him with your JC water walkers? He's like, what's going to happen here? And I was like, no, dude. And then he actually was a big shaper. He and Jason both were shaper and molders of my love for cheese pizza, because they would swear up and down just how you eat cheese pizza. You let it get to room temperature. You can't hide anything in a cheese pizza. We taste your crust. We taste your sauce. We taste it all. You can't run away from a cheese pizza. So until you can make a cheese pizza, you can't make pizza. So he's just a fantastic human being. I know he got drugged through the mud. There was some things that he took the fall for that he didn't do, and so he taught me a lot about life. And I'm still lucky to have him. Still lucky to get the chance to talk to him every now and then.
What would you say that one of the biggest reasons Nebraska was so dominant in the 90s?
We were dominant in the 90s for a plethora of reasons. One of the things that Nebraska was always good at was being at the cutting edge of things. And when you saw Nebraska kind of fall off from being a leader in things, that's when their play on the field fell off. But we had a nutritionist named Dave Ellis before a lot of teams even had training tables. And we had the circuit training that all these guys are going through right now. We were doing that because they wanted to do that. You also had a group of guys that, I call it the land of misfit toys. Some guys laugh at that. But, Tommy Frazier, nobody wanted him to play quarterback. They wanted him to play running back or receiver. And T.O. was like, well, you're going to be a quarterback for us. Jared Tomich, another guy that I've mentioned before, was told he wasn't smart enough to play college football. Well, they bring him in, they prop 48 him, they get his grades right, they get him through there. Jason and Christian Peter were hockey guys. Grant Wistrom, Michigan wanted him to possibly play tight end.
Really?
Aaron Taylor out of the state of Texas was too short to be a lineman in Texas. So you had all these guys that kind of got together. Phil Ellis, a teammate of mine, was a 220-pound middle linebacker. Still the best linebacker I've ever seen. Better than Rude, better than anybody you've seen there in 20 years. But you had all these guys that just loved the game of football. They just wanted to play. They just wanted to be great. And don't get me wrong, we had some freaks. Like Lawrence Phillips, freak.
Yeah.
Like, you just saw that dude, you're like, we're good. You're way better than all of us. So you had this kind of group of dudes that worked really hard together. We fought like brothers do, but you got along, and you knew that everybody was there to win on Saturday, and we held each other to a standard. When we thought preparation was slipping, no coach had to come say something. The team handled it all. So you get this kind of perfect storm of imperfection and dudes at the position they want to play, not where somebody wanted to put them. And then you get out there and you start winning, and you're like, man, we are really good. You know, sprinkle in Turman and his brother-in-law now, John Vedral, who's a great buddy of mine, played wingback from Gregory, South Dakota. The guy was an absolute freaking psychopath. But he was 5'10", maybe 200 pounds. And his sole mission in life on the football field was to try to kill you. And so you get enough dudes out there that just want to go play hard, you're going to win. It works at every level of football.
Yeah, I remember you telling me a story. Is it you or Turman, I think, was telling me a story about Vedzral. There was some play where his job was just to, like, pull and just smoke someone on the blind side. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. That was a play that they put in for Colorado. Colorado had a nose guard named Kerry Hicks.
Yeah.
And Kerry Hicks was way good. And they played an odd man front, meaning the center was covered and both tackles were covered. So they called it wham, right? So they would bring the wing back in motion. Okay, so you got a 200-pound wing back, 275-pound nose guard. The center's job was to not even touch the nose guard. Don't even touch him. Just dodge him and try to get up the field and get a linebacker. Meanwhile, the wingback has a 15-yard full-bore head of steam from going in motion, and he's just going to just wham the nose guard. So if you think about that, you got to have somebody half crazy to say, I'm going to go throw my 200 pounds at this 275-pound guy. Vedral, Clester Johnson would knock that kid senseless. And by the end of the game, Kerry Hicks had no clue where he was going to get hit from. And that guy was an All-American. Like, he was good. And Osborne was just like, we're going to beat him. And we're going to make him look silly. And when you got guys like Clester and John, they're like, yeah, I'll go in motion and sprint 15 yards and try to knock that guy's head off, you bet.
So kind of going off the way that Nebraska was so dominant in the 90s, what's something that you think that Nebraska needs to improve on to be dominant once again?
I think the biggest shift for Nebraska right now, Tanner, is its attitude. You know, if you look at Nebraska's roster, they have talented kids, but, you know, one of my favorite movies is A Bronx Tale, where Robert De Niro says there's nothing worse in life than wasted talent.
Yeah.
And I think Nebraska has wasted a lot of talent. I think it's undisciplined. I think that the stories that I get now about how the kids were full-blown running the operation up there is just scary to death for me, because no 18 to 22-year-old kid needs to be in charge of anything. They're not even in charge of themselves.
Right.
So to hear some of the privileges that they had at Nebraska before earning them was tough to hear. But with Frost in there and his crew, I mean, people will say, oh, no position safe. Literally, no position is safe. Like, I have a $100 bet with another guy that one of the starters on the offensive line will not start next year. And I feel perfectly confident in that bet. But that will be what's changed the most, is discipline. You know, those guys, they just need to know what discipline means, what expectation means, what accountability means, and then going out and just playing a wonderful game. I love the game of football. Baseball is my true love. Football is my mistress. Like, I just to go out and operate it with a team, when your success is relying on 10 other people, you'll never know what life is like until you're in that spot, because that's when you know if you can function in society. And the great part is it's people from every different background and upbringing. You got rich kids, you got poor kids, you got black kids, you got white kids, you got Hispanic kids. It's awesome. And that's why it is my mistress. But those kind of things are what Frost and crew will bring back to Nebraska. And then you tie it back into what the state is about. You know, the state is a hard-working state. Well, the football team wasn't hard-working for a long time. They thought they were working hard. You know, you get told you're working hard. Everybody's like, yeah, I'm working hard. When you go through a workout, you can't finish that workout because your insides are trying to be your outsides. Now you're working hard. When you can't eat before you work out, now you know what a workout is.
You send 3 kids to the hospital, that's a pretty good workout.
Yeah.
Well. Them dudes, allegedly, them dudes may have had a little bit too much fun the night before the workouts. That's dumb.
I also heard that. So as a former walk-on yourself, what do you think of Scott Frost focusing on like building up the walk-on program, especially with like in-state kids?
It's something near and dear to my heart, of course, but all those kids ask, you know, and there's a lot of small towns. My family is from up in northeast Nebraska, a little small community in Newman Grove. My father actually had the chance to walk on. Real quick sidebar story, but my dad had a chance to walk on, so he did. He had been there about the time Johnny Rogers was. My dad led the state rushing, and they found out at his physical that he had scoliosis in his spine, and so they couldn't clear him. George Sullivan, who was the head trainer, said, "Hey, if you get hit once, you're going to be paralyzed." So my dad hung up the cleats. So when I went up there and walked on, and we're going through the physical, George Sullivan's still the trainer, and I walk in there and he goes, "Vrzal?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Your dad Terry?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Bend over and grab your ankles." I was like, whoa. Pump the brakes here, old man. Like, what are you talking about? And one of the younger trainers was like, "Your dad has scoliosis. We're checking to see if you have it." I was like, "Oh, okay,
good.
All right, cool." So I did that. But to tie it back into the community is what Nebraska football is about. You know, from Hyannis to Sterling, everybody's got to be on the same page. And another thing that I didn't add to Tanner's point from before, what will make Nebraska great again. I've never been a part of an organization where, from the guy that washed the jocks to the lady to the head coach, everybody, the only thing we talked about was winning a national championship and being unbelievable. And in any spread, in any setup, it's always the best. You know, I deal with it in my everyday life at Paisans. I got people that half-ass stuff, and we just get rid of them because I don't need somebody trying to halfway make a great pie. I want to make a great pie every time we put one out.
Yeah.
So it was a cool thing about it, and that's another thing that I've learned from my experience of it. But yeah, anytime you can get a homegrown kid that just give me a shot.
Yeah.
Just give me a shot, coach.
Who is the most competitive guy on the team, do you think?
Okay, I'm going to divide this into 2 categories.
Okay.
Most competitive day in, day out is probably Tommy Frazier. Tommy did not like losing at anything, ever. And if you thought you beat him at something, man, he would yip and run his mouth just to show you that he didn't. On game day, maybe this is more psychopath, but on game day, Terry Keneally and Aaron Taylor were 2 of the bigger psychos I had ever run across in my life. Terry Keneally was the nicest guy you will ever meet. He's a great dude. See him, he comes and gets some pizzas at Paisans. You put a helmet on that guy, he would just as soon punch you in the face than talk to you. But take the helmet off, it's like, hey, you know, he did it in practice. He would destroy me. And then we'd both go get a drink of water because we subbed out at the same time. He'd take his helmet up and, "Hey, Verse, how's it going, bud?" I'm like, you just called me a cocksucker like 3 seconds ago. Like, what are you doing? He's like, "Hey, it was on the field, bud. You know, that's how it goes."
Yeah.
Like, all right.
Yeah.
It's like a light switch. I got one last question for you. It's a pretty good one. I've been wanting to ask you for a while.
Pretty good one if you do say so yourself.
Yeah, no, I'm a really good question asker. This one's really good, though. So what do we have to do to get a pizza named after us?
It goes many a direction.
Okay.
As you can see now with some of our expansion, we've got some new ones on there. So that you've had to have worked for me.
Okay.
So being a day one OG, I got 3 of my OGs on there.
Sure.
I've got teammates. I've got one guy that's a brother-in-law of a teammate, just out of spite to my teammate because he was just riding my ass about putting his piece on there. And then his brother-in-law said, "Well, I'd like one too." I'm like, "You know what? You can have one too, country. We'll call yours a slice of country." So he's on there. So those would be 2 big ones. If you come up with something, I tell you what, you boys come up with something. Sorry, you young men come up with something.
Okay.
And we'll put it on as a pizza of the month. You can pick the month.
Oh, sweet.
And if it does well, then we'll add it to the menu.
All right, sounds good.
We'll Shark Tank.
Don't be getting me any like foo-foo-y toppings where I got to go.
No
get
way.
Something different.
It's
like,
gonna be
take
in-house
what
stuff.
I got and do that.
I've got a pretty good idea already, but I'll workshop it. We'll get something going.
You guys think about it. Don't be telling me I need to import like some kind of salmon.
No.
Or some bullshit like that.
Thank you so much, Matt, for coming in.
Yeah, boys.
Appreciate
if you
it.
ever call me Matt again, I will punch you in the head.